for another episode 3 of Morning Fuel. I'm joined today by Tommy Miller of Nixon Law Group. He's senior counsel there in Richmond, Virginia. Tommy, how are you today?
Doing good, Todd. How are you doing this morning?
I cannot complain, and certainly all is well here. So, we've been talking a lot about just the companies we come into contact with, the founders we come in contact with, and I'm happy to have you on today because we kind of like gelled really well very quickly on just thinking through strategy and all that. And so I look forward to a good conversation with you today.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I think you said it. I think you said it right. I think just clicking and getting in touch with people that share the same mindset is always good, and I'm glad we get to have this conversation.
So as we get rolling here, I like to share the mug. So today it's my boys.
Oh,
It's kind of how I feel like, as you start a company, you just jump in and you just don't care.
There you go.
Well, you do care, but so that's my fuel for today. And this is the mug of the day. How about you? You got anything there?
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite mugs. It says, if at first you don't succeed, try doing what your lawyer said in the first place. It's a mug that I got from a manager of mine when I was in the pharmaceutical company. And so, it was one of those things where we routinely engage with marketing teams that have an opinion, and all we can say is,
what do you mean? We don't have opinions.
I drink a strong cup of this every day, and ultimately I give the advice I give, and if they listen to it, they do. If they don't, they'll come back.
Yep, that's it. A lot of the things that you have and we came together on was the 5 tips from the negotiation table really lend themselves well to, and the last episode of Morning Fuel was igniting great questions, and and certainly you have a lot which ties into what which I have seen as well. I think that's where the camaraderie has come from.
Yeah.
And we talk about, so just to start things off, we talk about having a flexible and solid and flexible strategy and commercialization plan. That's your way of saying good marketing plan, good business strategy.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about that and what you see from your perspective.
Yeah. So, I get to work with a lot of really smart people in the startups. A lot of them are the scientists, or the ones that are inventing the idea and creating the technology, and and they get so wrapped up and they get so excited about the prospect of this technology working that they really just don't get a chance to think about how to turn that into a business, and then thereafter a profitable business later on. And so one of the things that I like to do with our clients is really sit down and talk to them about kind of getting a focus. I see it as trying to be the train versus the flock of birds. When I think about a flock of birds, they have a general idea of where they want to go, but at any one time they can split off and go.
It's wild. Yeah.
It's wild. And for me, I'd like to get them on the train mindset. We have a focus, where you're going, but there will be times along that track that you make a decision. And if that's a pivot and you're going a completely different direction in your market, that's okay. And that's expected. But to be nimble enough to be able to do that is something that I always think is really important to start at the beginning, so that you don't get bogged down or entrenched in a strategy that quite honestly may not work from both a legal or a financial perspective.
You're right. And, I always talk about in planning, so this is perfect. Like I talk about building durability within a plan. Have an economic crisis thrown at you, and things suddenly have to change. So, how is it you can apply a great piece of technology to potentially solving another problem along the path as market conditions warrant?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and again, it's a learned skill. A lot of folks, especially in the early stages of companies, have an idea and they want to take it in one direction. And sometimes they'll fight tooth and nail to stay in that one direction. So if they can get some advisors that teach them how to be nimble and build that durability like you're talking to into their initial business plans, it's going to take them a long way. It helps from a legal perspective, because I can at least say, here are, the possibilities, and actually give them some possibilities, versus if they're stuck on one idea and that idea isn't going to work. I don't want to say no.
And what about competition? Where do you see gaps, or are there any common threads? I tend to want to make sure that before we really get rolling, we understand the competitive landscape. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, and I think, it's hard, because there are a lot of people that will say, "Oh, there's nothing else like this in the market," and that's probably not true.
All the time.
But that's okay, because quite frankly, I think it's really good for people to understand and honestly understand the market and their competitors. I think that when a business starts and they've gone in and had somebody do the research, and they've done the research themselves to know who the big competitors are in that market, who are they going to butt up against, it's going to make like that market plan a little bit more solid, because they're going to know, do I want to fit into the market? Am I just trying to take up a little piece of market share?
Yeah, which is okay.
Which is okay, and that's a strategy. Or do you really want to disrupt? Our firm, we tend to represent a lot of innovators, and they're in it to disrupt. And so we go into the engagement knowing that, and we understand that they're not looking to go in and just steal market share. So our job is to really kind of carve out and almost create a new iteration of a market, because you're trying to move that technology, or move that service, or move that piece of commodity forward in its integration. And for us, that means we get to look at laws maybe a little bit differently, or we get to push policy issues. All that stuff we have to kind of create at the beginning of the business, to make sure that at the end there's a market to be had. We talk with a lot of accelerators. We talk with a lot of incubators. There are a large number of angel investors and VC firms, and small seed capitalists right here in the Richmond area, and I know that expands up and down the East Coast. We listen to a lot of what they say. We have people that are involved in some of the pitch presentations, and some of those themes keep getting echoed. And this idea of understanding your competitive landscape, understanding where you fit in the market. These are questions that they ask. These are ideas that people who want to invest in a company have on their mind, because it lends credence to the fact that these people on the other side of this pitch have a really good understanding of what it takes to make that business successful. And that doesn't just happen organically. It takes a lot of research and planning.
They, when they're making their investment, they want to know that the company has thought about, because it is going to come up, where are the pitfalls? Right. And if you're thinking about product market fit, if you're thinking about competitive landscape, what do you do if you have to make an adjustment? And having, as best you can, that's why it's planning, right? So, but as best you can, create it's that durability piece again, but create it in a way that you can adjust on the fly, but have at least a vision of how you might get there. Even if in the minute you've got to like obviously make that adjustment, is important. I had a client come to me a few years back, and we were doing their direct-to-consumer business. It was a startup out of Silicon Valley, and they were also patenting this technology inside the product they were bringing to market. And I had said to them, it's like, to be direct-to-consumer, which, by the way, if you want to go there, let's do it. I mean, all in, but to get there is going to require some significant capital. You've got this great portfolio of intellectual property. Now we've got to create that pull through on the B2C side. Mm-hmm. So, if you can go and partner with someone or other companies that have the channels. So in this case, it was retail.
Yeah.
Now they're licensing to companies that sell into retail already. They don't have to worry about it. And Their technology is inside someone else's technology or product. And so we created an ingredient brand. You think about like Intel. We kind of did something similar, and basically created this enabling technology of this consumer electronics device and created the pull through that way. So we had to at least educate the market. What does it mean when this technology is inside this other product?
Yep.
They went from $500,000 to 23 million in 3 years. So, those are the kinds of stories that, to your point about being durable, he was, at least I had to get him there a little bit, but it was like, you've got this great thing. Can we pivot here and actually go with where maybe a path to least resistance? And then look, you can keep the direct to consumer piece as almost like a secondary channel and way to prove out some of your own products.
Sure.
But your end goal should be to just collect a check in the licensing game. So it worked out well for him.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. No, I mean, I think just, again, keeping an idea that really, and I think it's one of the tips is understanding who's paying for stuff. And we might get to this later, but I know one of the main issues that we focus on is first, what we talked about is there a market? Is there a problem actually that your product is solving? Who's solving that problem, and then who's going to pay for it? And is it a business to business scenario, or is it straight to consumer, or what's your distribution channel look like? How many middlemen do you want to fit into that supply chain before you finally start like getting to customers? So
and how profitable can you be in that path to get there?
Right. And does it make sense? Because I know people that want to they're going to sell to a wholesaler, which is then going to sell to a retailer, and then it's going to sell to and everybody's going to put their chip on it and mark it up so that by the time it gets to a consumer, are you actually reaching a market that you intended on reaching?
And will they pay?
And will they pay for it? Because again, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you intended on being a moderately priced piece of technology, but you want to put it through this supply chain where everybody's adding 10%, you get to the end of the line in the store and the customer's looking at it and they're priced out.
Talk about where you see gaps in like highly regulated industry. I mean, that's your sweet spot.
Yeah, I think highly regulated industries like the ones that I've served and the ones that you've been a part of, especially finance industries. I do a lot of healthcare, life science, and biotech. There are actually there are some very strict rules and requirements to putting out any type of piece of marketing materials, the disclosures you have to add, the evidence that you have to have, and the various pieces of information that you have to gather before anyone knows that your product even exists. That is that type of market intelligence and that sort of research and development that has to go in is expensive for companies. And I think just educating some startups on just like, this is what the expense is going to be to do this type of research that you need to be able to make the ultimate claim that you want at the end of the line, that's going to resonate with your market, that's going to resonate with your target, that's going to resonate within your industry. People who want to start a business in regulated industries almost fizzle out at the research phase because they just don't understand or get a grip on how complicated it's going to be to move forward. But one of the things that I like to do is really prioritize, and people will jump right to the exit, which is good to have in mind. And I want to know about, and I want to talk about, but I'm going to let them know, here's your first priority. Here's what you need to work on right now. Here's where you need to spend your seed money. Here's where you need to spend your Series 1 money. Sometimes I have a conversation. I'm like, you don't want to engage lawyers yet. Don't engage me yet. Don't hire me yet. Don't spend your money on me yet. And I know that's really hard, and a lot of lawyers will have a hard time saying that, but I think it's one of the things that shows good integrity for understanding your client's business is saying, you're not ready for me yet. You need to do some stuff first. And it's really that gap in information and understanding what regulations are going to apply and what laws are going to apply, and then how to just break it down into the chunks to be able to move forward. When we talk about life science marketing, you ultimately are that starts in clinical phase 2. You really should be thinking about that at phase 2 clinical trials, for example. I mean, that's your inhuman, that's your safety study, and you need to start thinking about what does your commercial on TV look like while you
and what can you say and can't say.
Exactly.
So you can make claims. Yeah.
And I've worked with marketing teams and talked with them before, where we get to launch and they want to start saying all this stuff. And I say, that's great. Show me
Where's
your
the study?
reference. Where's your study?
Darn data.
Yeah. And so that's kind of one of the things. And it is just a whole bunch of prep work. Obviously, it's a lot more than we can probably talk about this morning. But it's just kind of just breaking it down and understanding what standards are going to apply to your given industry, having a trusted competency circle to help you guide you through those steps, and then just executing on the plan.
I'll tell you what, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit deeper on the exit strategy and things you're seeing from the negotiation table on exit. We'll be right back after this.
You were born with it. It's always been inside you. The passion, the drive, the spirit to create something bigger than yourself. You're on a course. Turning your dream into a company that will change an industry and make a positive contribution to the community you serve. At the Rocket Factory, your mission is our mission, to help you and your team take that next step, whatever it may be. Proven strategic marketing advice rooted in measurable performance that moves your high-growth organization forward, delivered in a whole new way. With unmatched experience spanning the dawn of our digital age to the data-driven here and now, we provide fuel to help your ideas take flight.
All right, we're back on episode 3 of Morning Fuel. I'm joined by Tommy Miller of Nixon Law Group. Let's go a little deeper on exit. You were sharing with me a story about tendencies to want to get, focused on a single company or that you think will buy you, as being a founder. Talk a little bit about that and really the flexibility that's needed there.
This also ties in to part of just understanding your market. And again, starting your journey in a business with an understanding of what your exit is involves understanding your market. And a lot of times, whether it's a device manufacturer or if it's a early stage pharmaceutical company, their idea is, I'm going to create this wonderful technology and Pfizer is going to buy it, or I'm going to license it to Bayer, or Medtronic is going to pick it up, or GE Healthcare is going to pick. And those are all great big names, and they're good companies, and they do a lot of acquisitions, but it doesn't mean that they are buying everything. It doesn't mean that they are licensing everything. And sometimes you get to the negotiating table on there and they look at the numbers and they look at the strategy, and they say no, or not yet. And now, if you haven't worked in a commercialization plan for yourself, or a plan B for CND for your acquisition targets, or your licensing targets, then you're really going to be you're going to be sitting there at a disadvantage. And so working that in and making sure that you can pivot and say, all right, well, if I have to hold on to this piece of technology longer than I expected, I actually already have a commercialization plan. And whether you're going to do that by going out and raising some additional funding to be able to pay a sales force or produce inventory or something like that, at least you have a plan. there are organizations that can help you, and there are strategies to implement early on, where if you get to the negotiation table, your main target pulls out the stop sign and says, "No, you're not ready for us.
What are you going to do?" Yeah.
What are you going to do? And hopefully, again, you've made that shift. I will also say that if you create that commercialization plan with exit in mind, not only do you have a strong product, but you go to present it, and they're like, all right, well, you've taken all the work away from us, and now it's going to increase your value. It's going to increase the likelihood that you get to yes. You're able to say, here's the plan, here's the science, here's the data, here's the market strength, and oh, by the way, here's a way for you to take this to market, utilizing your resources to be able to do that.
It's almost like you're doing a lot of the work for them.
Exactly.
And you come at it in a much stronger, sitting in a much stronger position at the table.
Absolutely. The more work you can do for somebody else, the more that somebody is going to like you.
Always a good thing.
And that translates into successful deals and real money when it comes down to thinking about selling or licensing out this product that has taken you years to develop. So it makes the time worthwhile. I think it's really important to understand that commercial landscape at the very beginning, so that you know what you're working toward, but also you're starting to build value. That really, it's the sweat equity really in your company. You're building that value from the very beginning.
Yeah, and I always, just to kind of summarize what we've been talking about having solid commercialization plan, solid marketing plan, solid business strategy, understanding your competitor and the product market fit. And by the way, with competitor, and I talk a lot about this on the site, it's, making sure that if someone else is doing what you're doing, that's fine. If you can reposition yourself or turn it, either with a pricing structure, or it could be just to what you said earlier, it could be that I'm just going to get this piece of the pie of it. But it allows you to kind of know ahead of time, or know going in, or knowing with a plan how you might make that adjustment when you start spending real dollars to go to market.
Right.
Obviously, beginning the company with the end in mind was one that we had talked about, and then certainly with everything, making sure that in highly regulated and compliance-driven markets that you're prepared that way. Any other parting thoughts that you have as we're going to wind down?
Yeah, no, I'll just say that I love working with marketing teams. I really do.
You're just saying that.
No, it's actually really interesting, because it is the practice of law can be a very dull thing to do. It's a lot of and to be able to be around folks that are creating and thinking and trying to disrupt or innovate in markets. That's the reason, that's one of the reasons why I got into this particular area. It's because there are so many smart people that are trying to pivot in the marketplace. And I find that good strategic thinkers make good marketing decisions, and usually make good strategic decisions. I really enjoy this particular space. And I'm glad to see, folks like you starting companies with, again, this is, I think, why we clicked, with the same mindset in the way that we approach startups, and that is of a place of guidance and advice. As I start working with more of these innovators, especially as we get into more health tech and the way that consumer goods are really merging almost with
consumerization of healthcare.
We're finding that juxtaposition really interesting, and hopefully we can start moving the needle on adoption of those types of technologies.
This has been another awesome edition of Morning Fuel. Thanks, Tommy Miller from Nixon Law Group, for joining me today, and we'll be back in a couple weeks with another Morning Fuel. Take care.